The air smelled of wet asphalt, and the distant hum of traffic blended with the occasional honk of impatient drivers. Under the dim glow of a flickering street lamp, an old man stood still, gripping his white cane with fingers trembling from both age and uncertainty. People rushed past him, too lost in their own worlds to notice. Some stole quick glances, but none stopped. None but one. A man in a long black coat, his dark hair slightly damp from the drizzle, stepped forward. His presence was quiet, yet carried a weight that made the surrounding noise feel distant. He didn't rush. His movements were measured, deliberate. He observed the blind man, his deep-set eyes filled with something rare in a city that never paused, genuine concern. "Excuse me, sir," the old man called out, his voice both frail and desperate. "Could you help me cross the street?" Before the man could respond, another voice sliced through the air. "I got this." A younger man, dressed in a sharp navy suit with an expensive watch glinting under the street lamp, stepped in between them. His confident smirk was almost theatrical. The kind worn by those who loved an audience. "Let me guess," he continued, chuckling slightly as he adjusted his tie. "You want to get to the other side, right? And you need someone to take your hand and lead you like a lost puppy?" His voice dripped with condescension. The blind man shifted uncomfortably. A few bystanders slowed their pace, drawn to the tension crackling in the air. The man in black remained still. Observing. Listening. The young businessman leaned closer to the blind man. "You know, it's kind of funny. The world's built for people who can see. If you can't navigate it, maybe you shouldn't be out here alone." He laughed as if he had just delivered the punchline to a private joke. The blind man's grip on his cane tightened. His face, lined with years of unseen struggles, twitched slightly, though he said nothing. Silence. Then, a quiet voice, steady, deep, and composed. "You think strength is about seeing the path ahead?" The businessman's smirk faltered as he turned toward the speaker. His eyes widened slightly when he finally recognized the man standing before him. Keanu Reeves. A hush fell over the small crowd gathering. Phones were discreetly lifted, cameras rolling. Keanu took a slow step forward, his eyes locked onto the businessman's with an intensity that wasn't aggressive, but carried the weight of something far greater. Patience. Understanding. And something far more disarming, wisdom. The businessman shifted his stance, but Keanu remained still, the moment stretching like an unspoken challenge. A single raindrop slid down the side of Keanu's face, but he didn't blink. The young businessman cleared his throat. "I was just saying." Keanu tilted his head ever so slightly, cutting him off without speaking. A flicker of doubt flashed across the businessman's face. And just like that, the balance of power had begun to shift. The businessman exhaled sharply, shaking his head with an amused smile. "Okay, this is surreal. Keanu Reeves, huh?" He let out a short laugh, scanning the growing crowd as if to confirm that people were witnessing this moment. "What are the odds?" Keanu remained silent, his eyes calm, observing. The businessman took a step closer, lowering his voice just enough for the cameras to still pick up his words. "Look, I get it. You're the quiet, mysterious type. The guy who drops a profound one-liner and walks away like some kind of monk." He smirked. "But in the real world, things don't work like that." Keanu's expression didn't change. His stillness made the businessman's words feel heavier, almost desperate to fill the space. "I mean, let's be honest," the businessman continued, adjusting his cufflinks as he paced slightly. "You're an actor. A Hollywood guy. You live in a world of scripts and cameras, pretending to be the hero." His tone took on a patronizing edge. "But out here? This is reality. And in reality, people like him," he motioned toward the blind man with a lazy flick of his wrist, "need to accept their limitations." A murmur rippled through the crowd. Some exchanged glances, others whispered among themselves. The blind man's fingers twitched on his cane, but he remained silent. Keanu's eyes flickered toward him, then back to the businessman. Still, he didn't speak. The businessman took the silence as an opening. "See, I help people for a living. I run a consulting firm, help companies see the bigger picture." He emphasized the word see with a smirk, as if making some clever joke. So, trust me when I say this, the world doesn't slow down for people who can't keep up. Keanu slowly exhaled, his jaw tightening slightly, but not in anger. In patience. The businessman grinned. You want to help? Fine. Tell me something, Keanu. He folded his arms, tilting his head mockingly. Let's say we both help this man cross the street. Who's he better off with? Me, a guy who understands business, power, and how the world actually works. Or you, an actor, playing another role. A few in the crowd let out soft gasps. The question was a trap. The businessman's smirk widened, sensing the tension. He had turned the moment into a spectacle. But Keanu remained unmoved. A slight breeze brushed past, ruffling his black coat, but he stood firm. Then, finally, he spoke. Tell me something, Keanu said, his voice calm but deliberate. If you take his hand, but walk too fast, did you really help him cross? The businessman blinked. Keanu tilted his head slightly, waiting. A flicker of doubt flashed in the businessman's eyes, but he quickly recovered, scoffing. That's cute. You're speaking in riddles now? Keanu didn't answer. Instead, he slowly stepped forward, not aggressively, just enough to close the space between them. The businessman instinctively leaned back, his confidence wavering for just a fraction of a second. The power was beginning to shift. The businessman chuckled, though it was thinner now, a little forced. All right, Keanu. I see what you're trying to do. That whole wise man with the cryptic quotes thing. It works in movies, sure. But out here, real talk wins. Logic wins. Keanu remained silent, his gaze steady. The businessman continued, his tone confident. Let's get real. The world is built for people who adapt, who move fast. That's how I got here, how we got here. He gestured to the crowd, as if expecting agreement. Success isn't about waiting for others to catch up. It's about leading. You either keep up, or you get left behind. Keanu exhaled slowly, his fingers flexing once before relaxing. His posture remained effortless, yet something in his stillness shifted, like a mountain finally addressing the wind. Success, Keanu murmured, his voice smooth yet weighted. You say it's about moving fast? He tilted his head slightly, considering. And if someone can't see the road ahead, should we run past them? Or walk beside them? The businessman opened his mouth, but Keanu lifted a hand, not to silence him, but to slow him. A subtle shift of control. You say you help people, Keanu continued, his voice as calm as ever. But real help isn't about proving you're ahead. It's about knowing when to slow down. About knowing when to listen. The businessman's smirk faltered for just a second. Keanu's dark eyes held his. Then, with deliberate patience, he turned toward the blind man. Sir, he said gently, what do you need? The old man, who had been silent in the growing storm of words, raised his head. He hesitated, perhaps unused to being asked. I just need to know there's a step before the curb. Keanu nodded. And then, without breaking eye contact with the man, he asked softly, and did anyone else here think to ask you that? The street was silent. A few people in the crowd shuffled, exchanging quiet looks. Some even lowered their phones, realizing they had been watching like spectators instead of witnesses. The businessman cleared his throat, forcing a chuckle. He hesitated. That's a nice sentiment. But it doesn't change reality. He squared his shoulders again, regaining his bravado. At the end of the day, you either keep up or fall behind. That's just how things work. Keanu finally looked back at him, studying him with quiet curiosity. Then he nodded, as if he had learned something. You know, Keanu said, voice thoughtful, I used to believe that too. The businessman frowned slightly. Keanu took a step forward, not threatening, just enough to create weight between them. When I was young, I lost people I loved, Keanu said, his voice steady, honest. And I kept moving. Because the world told me that if I stopped, I'd fall behind. That grief was something to outrun. He let the words settle. But the thing about moving too fast, is that you stop seeing. The businessman opened his mouth, but Keanu wasn't finished. I've met people with all the money in the world, he continued, his voice never rising, never faltering. People who built empires by running ahead. But when they finally stopped? He paused, his eyes searching the businessman's face. They turned around and realized, they were alone. A single raindrop slid down the businessman's temple. His jaw tightened. He tried to hold on to his smirk, but something in Keanu's words had cracked through. Keanu exhaled softly, then gave the smallest of smiles, just enough to disarm. You say reality is about power. About control, he said. But real power? It's knowing when to stop and ask, are you okay? Do you need a step? The words landed like quiet thunder. The businessman swallowed. His shoulders, once rigid with confidence, seemed just a little less sure. His hands, once gesturing with certainty, remained still. Keanu turned to the blind man again. Then, without a word, he extended his hand, not to pull, not to lead, but to offer. The old man smiled. A simple, genuine smile. And then, with quiet dignity, he reached out and took it. And just like that, the power had fully shifted. For a moment, there was only silence. The kind that stretches thick in the air, heavy with realization. The businessman stood still, his jaw tight, his fingers twitching slightly at his sides. He had started this exchange with complete confidence, expecting a quick and easy victory. But now, his footing felt uncertain, like standing on a floor that had quietly disappeared beneath him. The crowd had changed. What started as a group of casual onlookers had become something else entirely. They weren't just watching anymore, they were invested. Faces that once held idle curiosity now showed something different, realization, admiration, even quiet shame. Someone in the back whispered, "Damn, he's right." Another murmured, "Did you see how he just asked him?" No assumptions. No ego. A woman near the front, who had been recording the whole time, slowly lowered her phone, forgetting for a second that she was even filming. The businessman cleared his throat, trying to reclaim his presence. Look, this is all very poetic, he said, forcing out a chuckle. But let's be real. The world isn't built on feelings. It's built on results. He motioned toward the old man, his tone shifting back to something sharp. At the end of the day, he still needed help. He still had to rely on someone stronger, someone better equipped to navigate the world. There it was. The final attempt to wrestle back control. Keanu turned to face him fully now, his dark eyes unwavering. He didn't react with anger or annoyance, only quiet, measured patience. Then, slowly, he smiled. It wasn't smug. It wasn't mocking. It was the kind of smile that came from understanding something deeper. And then, with perfect clarity, Keanu asked. But who decides who's better equipped? The businessman blinked. His mouth opened slightly, then closed. Keanu's voice remained calm, but every word carried weight. Is it the one who assumes, he continued. The one who moves fast and never looks back? Or the one who listens? A hush fell over the street. The businessman's confidence wavered, his bravado cracking in real time. Someone in the crowd let out a breath they hadn't realized they were holding. A teenager near the front whispered, "Holy sh**t." And then, soft at first, hesitant, applause. One person. Then another. And then, like a wave, it spread. The businessman's face reddened slightly, his hands clenching into fists. His carefully crafted composure, the expensive suit, the perfect posture, the well-rehearsed confidence, was unraveling before everyone's eyes. And Keanu? Keanu just stood there, still as ever. Grounded. Unshaken. The businessman tried to interject. A woman in the crowd interrupted, shaking her head. Nah, man. You lost. More murmurs, more nods of agreement. The businessman's frustration deepened, his lips pressing into a thin line. He could feel the tide shifting against him, and there was nothing he could do to stop it. He wasn't just losing control of the conversation. He had already lost. The applause hadn't faded yet. It pulsed through the crowd like an unspoken agreement, an acknowledgement that something significant had just happened. The businessman's face remained tight, his eyes scanning the crowd, looking for something, anything, to grab onto. Some way to salvage what had just slipped through his fingers. Keanu, however, was in no rush. He let the silence settle. He let the weight of the moment sink in. Then, slowly, he turned back to the businessman. His expression was unreadable, calm, steady. And yet, behind those dark eyes, there was something else. Something deeper. "You know what's interesting?" Keanu said finally, his voice quiet but deliberate. "People like you always talk about power." The businessman stiffened slightly, as if bracing himself. Keanu tilted his head, studying him. "You think power means control? That if you move fast enough, speak loud enough, push hard enough, the world will bend to your will?" He let the words linger, heavy and unshakable. "But real power? It's not about control at all." The businessman exhaled sharply, forcing out a chuckle. "Oh yeah?" His voice was thinner now, stretched between frustration and forced confidence. "Then tell me, Keanu. What is real power?" Keanu's lips curved into the faintest hint of a smile. Not smug. Not mocking. Just, knowing. "Real power," Keanu said, his voice unwavering, "is knowing when to let go." The businessman blinked. "Let go of what?" Keanu's gaze didn't waver. "The need to prove you're ahead." He took a small step forward, not in aggression, but in clarity. "The need to be the loudest voice in the room. The need to convince yourself that running faster makes you stronger." He exhaled, slow and steady. "Because at the end of the day, no matter how fast you move, you can't outrun the truth." The businessman swallowed, but said nothing. Keanu continued, his tone softer now. "You asked who this man would be better off with." He gestured toward the blind man, still standing quietly beside him. "The one who moves fast? Or the one who listens?" A beat of silence passed. "Here's the truth," Keanu said. "It was never about who was better." His gaze held steady, unwavering. "It was about who was willing." The businessman's throat bobbed as he swallowed again. Keanu inhaled, then spoke the final words with perfect clarity. "You think power is about taking control," he said. "But the strongest people are the ones who know when to share it." The words landed like a quiet earthquake. A hushed stillness swept through the crowd, one of those rare moments where people weren't just hearing something. They were feeling it. A young man in the front let out a low whistle. "Damn." The businessman's mouth opened, just slightly, but no words came out. His hands, once so animated, hung uselessly at his sides. For the first time in the entire exchange, he had nothing to say. Keanu didn't need to add anything else. He didn't gloat. He didn't smirk. He just stood there, letting the weight of his words settle into the air. And in that silence, the mic had officially dropped. The video spread like wildfire. Within hours, clips of the exchange flooded social media. Someone had uploaded a high-definition recording with the title, "Keanu Reeves silences arrogant businessman in the most humble way possible." The views skyrocketed, 100,000 in the first hour, then 1 million before midnight. Twitter was in a frenzy. The hashtag Keanu wins shot to the top of the trending list worldwide. People dissected every moment of the conversation, Keanu's patience, his wisdom, the businessman's unraveling. GIFs and memes flooded the platform, capturing the businessman's stunned expression and Keanu's final mic drop moment. Keanu just proved that real power isn't about control. It's about understanding. Absolute masterclass. Clapping hands Keanu wins, at The Real Thinker. This man really said, the strongest people are the ones who know when to share power, and walked off like a legend. Flushed face fire Keanu wisdom, at Deep Thoughts Daily. Even celebrities chimed in. Actor Mark Ruffalo retweeted the clip, writing, "We don't deserve Keanu. But we need Keanu." Keanu wins. Influencer Lexi James posted a reaction video on TikTok, her hands covering her mouth. This. Right. Here. This is how you handle arrogance, with grace and truth. I'm shook. The conversation spilled over to news outlets. CNN ran a segment titled, Keanu Reeves' Words Spark Global Conversation on Leadership and Power. A journalist from The Guardian wrote an op-ed, Keanu Reeves and the Art of Silent Power. Podcasts debated the meaning behind Keanu's words. Comment sections were filled with people sharing their own experiences, times when someone had rushed past them, ignored them, or assumed they weren't worth listening to. And the businessman? He remained silent. His usual flood of motivational tweets? Gone. His last post before the debate still sat there, untouched. Meanwhile, Keanu? He hadn't commented once. Because legends don't need to. And just like that, a single conversation changed everything. But now, the real question is, what do you think? Do you agree with Keanu's perspective? That real power isn't about control but about understanding and sharing it? Or do you think the businessman had a point? Does speed and dominance matter more in today's world? Drop your thoughts in the comments below. We're reading every single one. And before you go, take a second to hit that like button if this story gave you something to think about. It really helps more people see these powerful conversations. If you want to hear more mind-blowing, cinematic stories like this one, make sure you subscribe and turn on notifications. We've got some unbelievable stories coming up, trust me, you don't want to miss them. And hey, let's settle this once and for all, Team Keanu or Team Businessman? Type it out in the comments. Oh, and one last thing, where are you watching from? I love seeing people from all over the world in the comments. Whether you're in the US, India, the UK, Canada, or anywhere else, shout out your country below. Thanks for watching, and remember, sometimes the most powerful move is the one nobody sees coming.